Upon receiving my promotion, my sister-in-law remarked, "Guess they needed a token idiot," prompting my wife to simply smile. During a family dinner, they raised a toast to her ex right in front of me, which compelled me to leave early. My wife later texted, "Don't be dramatic. It was just a joke." The following day, instead of heading to work, I chose to visit a place I should have gone 2 months earlier. I have dedicated my entire adult life to the Bardstown Road plant, located just outside downtown Louisville. It's a gritty, noisy, and demanding work environment. For years, I toiled on the floor, returning home with oil embedded in my skin and steel shavings in my boots. I maintained a low profile, completing my assignments and taking on every extra shift available. I refrained from complaining and pursued night classes at Jefferson Community College while many of my peers were unwinding at bars. I gradually climbed the ranks, not quickly or flamboyantly, but through genuine hard work. Therefore, when I was promoted to operations supervisor last month, it held significant meaning for me. It was not merely a new title. It signified that I had transcended the role of just another laborer and had finally crossed over to a more respected position when I informed Melissa of my promotion while she was on the couch. Absorbed in her phone, I vividly remember the moment. "I got it," I announced. "Got what?" she asked. "The promotion to full-time operations supervisor starts Monday." She didn't even glance up, merely responding, "That's great, honey," while continuing to scroll. I stood there, hoping for a celebratory reaction, a smile, a hug, or even a kiss. Instead, she inquired about dinner plans. That evening, she shared a photo on Instagram featuring 2 champagne glasses with the caption, "Here's to new beginnings." I assumed she was being coy about my promotion. But then the comments began flooding in, asking if it was regarding Ava's college acceptance or if Craig had reached out again. I waited for a correction, but none came. My achievement didn't even make it into the caption. Though I should have spoken up, I remained silent. That Friday, we attended dinner at her parents' house in St. Matthews, surrounded by the usual crowd, her parents, both sisters, their spouses, and a couple of cousins. I used to look forward to these gatherings, but that was no longer the case. Midway through the meal, her father turned to me and said, "So, I hear you received some good news at work." Before I could respond, Jody, her younger sister, who always considers herself the smartest in the room, injected with, "Guess they needed a token idiot." The room erupted in laughter as though it were the most amusing comment they'd ever heard, with even her mother slapping the table in delight. Jody wore a self-satisfied smirk, while Melissa smiled and sipped her wine, allowing the moment to linger unchallenged, as if I somehow deserved the mockery. I was taken aback, feeling like a complete fool, as if they all viewed me as a mere joke they kept around out of pity. Yet I stayed silent, swallowing my pride and forcing a smile like a coward. The situation only worsened. When dessert arrived, Melissa's mother's peach cobbler, her favorite, they began reminiscing about Craig, her ex, who was known as the Golden Boy. He had been a bartender downtown, crafted exquisite cocktails, and wore snug shirts that showcased his physique. Melissa's mother reminisced, "Craig used to grill salmon with that lemon butter glaze, remember?" Jody chimed in, and his cocktails were amazing. He actually had taste. To my dismay, Melissa laughed right next to me, as her father raised his glass and remarked about Craig, saying that guy knew how to host a real dinner. I found myself waiting for Melissa to intervene, to say something, anything to put an end to the mockery. Instead, she clinked glasses with them, solidifying my feelings of isolation. In that moment, I rose silently from the table, walked out the front door without uttering a word. No one called after me. No one inquired about my well-being. It wasn't until 2 hours later that Melissa sent a text reading, "Don't be dramatic. It was a joke." That night was sleepless. I sat in the dark, beer in hand, staring blankly at the floor. The realization settled heavily in my chest like a cinder block, I was nothing more than a joke to them, every one of them. And my wife didn't care enough to defend me. The next morning, I donned my uniform, followed my usual routine, and grabbed my keys as if I were headed to the plant. But instead, I drove away, heading somewhere I should have visited months ago. I wasn't entirely sure where I was going when I left the house that morning. I simply drove south, past the city, down roads I hadn't traveled in years. Ultimately arriving in Elizabethtown, about an hour away. It was where my brother lived. We hadn't spoken much since Mom passed. Our lives had drifted apart, each filled with different mistakes. But I needed a place that offered solitude, somewhere free from laughter at my expense. I parked outside his house and sat in my truck for a while. Eventually, he emerged, shirtless and holding a coffee mug, looking surprised to see me. "Damn you alive," he greeted, but I didn't laugh. Instead, I asked, "You got a beer?" He nodded and motioned for me to come inside. I poured out everything to him, not all at once, but in fragments, punctuated by lengthy silences. I shared the promotion, the dinner, the toast to Craig, and Melissa's text. I didn't cry, but my throat felt raw. He listened. He genuinely listened. Then he said, "You're being used, man. She doesn't respect you. None of them do." I already suspected it, but hearing it out loud makes it harder to pretend. I stayed at his place that night. Melissa didn't call or text, not even a hint of concern. It was as if my absence went unnoticed. By Sunday, I returned home. When I walked into the house, Melissa was in the kitchen pouring coffee as if it were just another ordinary day. "You good now?" she asked, as though I had merely stepped out for a moment to gather my thoughts. I didn't respond. I went upstairs, showered, and sat on the edge of the bed. That night, she attempted to initiate intimacy as if nothing had transpired between us. Couldn't bring myself to participate. Kay turned away. The following week, I discovered she had been in contact with Craig again. Her phone lit up on the kitchen counter, displaying his name in the preview. I clicked on the thread. There was nothing explicit, but it was evident they had been communicating for months. She had even sent him pictures, one of our dog and another, of the peach cobbler from that dinner, captioned with asterisks, "Made your favorite last night." I didn't confront her, not yet. I needed to gather more evidence and figure out my next steps, so I began observing her, reading messages when she left her phone unattended, and tracking her location during errands. I could tell she wasn't physically involved with him, not yet. But emotionally, she had never truly severed ties. One evening, she told me she was going out for dinner with Jody. I decided to follow her. She didn't go to Jody's. She went to Craig's apartment near the waterfront, staying there for 3 hours. When she returned home, I casually asked, "How was Jody?" She didn't flinch. Annoying as always, she replied with a laugh, lying straight to my face. I simply nodded, feeling a mixture of anger and resignation. I was done pretending, yet I wasn't prepared to confront her. Just yet. This had shifted from mere betrayal to something more personal: revenge. A few days after witnessing her at Craig's apartment, something unusual occurred at work. My supervisor, Mike, a guy I'd known for years, called me into his office and closed the door behind us. "You okay, man?" he inquired. "Yeah, why?" I responded, wondering what prompted his concern. He leaned in closer, ready to delve into a conversation that would change everything. "Somebody filed a formal complaint against you," Mike said, his expression serious. "They claim you've been aggressive, short-tempered, maybe even unstable. HR is involved." I froze, staring at him in disbelief. I know," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. He continued, "It's anonymous, but they've got notes, dates, specifics." As I left his office, my hands trembled. It made no sense. I hadn't lost my cool with anyone. I had been quiet, perhaps withdrawn, but certainly not unprofessional. Suddenly, a realization struck me. Melissa had access to my schedule and calendar. She knew when I worked and who I interacted with. I began combing through our texts and her conversations with others. I recalled the night I had mentioned a colleague I needed to reprimand for tardiness. Melissa had joked, "You turning into a hard-ass now?" That incident was specifically cited in the complaint. While I lacked concrete proof of her involvement, the timing seemed too precise, too deliberate. It felt as though someone close to me was attempting to sabotage my career from the inside. That same week, I uncovered something else troubling. Our joint bank account revealed two substantial withdrawals, each just below the reporting threshold. Over a span of 3 weeks, Melissa had taken out $4,800 in cash. When I confronted her, she claimed it was to pay off some old debt from before our marriage. I pressed for details, asking what debt she was referring to, but she merely rolled her eyes and asked, "Jesus, why are you so paranoid lately?" I refused to drop it. After checking our credit reports, I found no evidence of the supposed debt. And I noticed our savings account had diminished by over $9,000 since the beginning of the year. That night, I sifted through her messages again. There it was, a conversation with Craig. "We can put down the deposit this weekend. Melissa already pulled it. I'll handle it." It's not even paying attention anymore. A deposit. She wasn't just seeing him again. She was orchestrating her exit, planning to take my money, my job, and move in with the very man her family had toasted right in front of me. All the while, I had been standing there, smiling like a fool, believing my only issue was a mean-spirited joke. I wasn't broken. I was seething with rage. I knew exactly what I needed to do next. After reading that message about the deposit, I sat in the dark, my phone still clutched in my hand, my heart racing. She was meticulously plotting everything right under my nose, believing I was too dim-witted to notice. Even if I did, this was more than infidelity. She was systematically dismantling me financially, emotionally, and now professionally. That weekend, I began gathering evidence. I took screenshots of messages, gathered bank statements, tracked GPS locations, and collected phone records showing the frequency of their communications, always during her errands or when I was on late shifts. I purchased a burner phone and set up a private email account where I stored all the files and uploaded copies to a cloud server under a pseudonym. I wasn't going to confront her without a strategy. I was finished acting on impulse. I intended to take my time and plan my response. Then came another twist. I went to retrieve my truck from the shop after a routine oil change. The mechanic, a friend from high school, casually asked, "Hey, do you want us to leave that stuff in the front passenger seat, or should we pull it out?" Confused, I replied, "What stuff?" He led me outside and pointed to a shopping bag crammed deep under the seat. Inside, I found receipts, hotel key cards, a small bottle of perfume, and a handwritten note that read, "Tonight was perfect. Can't wait to do it again. Love you, Em." She hadn't even bothered to conceal it. She was so confident that I wouldn't look. Or perhaps she was just that confident I wouldn't care. That same night, she returned home late, her hair curled and smelling of perfume she never wore for me. She claimed she had been with Jody again. I confronted her directly, asking, "You still seeing him?" She didn't even flinch. "What the hell are you talking about?" She replied, and in that moment, I realized she was prepared to maintain the lie until the very end. Even with the evidence I held, she would portray me as the unstable one, the paranoid husband. This was her plan. Every deception, every text, every hushed conversation, all aimed at painting me as erratic so that when she left, no one would question it. They would simply nod and say, "Well, he was kind of a mess." She wanted me gone, quietly, shamefully, but I wasn't going to vanish without a fight. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in over a decade. I called in sick. Then I drove straight to the county clerk's office and pulled property records. Craig's name wasn't on any lease, but Melissa's was. She had signed it using her maiden name. It was done. They had already established a place together. A whole new life, leaving me behind, stripped of my money, fired from my job, and smeared as a bitter burnout. That's when I realized no more waiting, no more gathering evidence. It was time to act, but not in the way they anticipated. I would not create a scene filled with yelling or shattered dishes. I intended to dismantle them slowly, methodically, and coldly, just as they had attempted to dismantle me. The pivotal day arrived on a Tuesday. Melissa remained blissfully unaware of the preparations I had been making behind the scenes. She still thought I was half asleep to the world, merely trudging through my job without questioning anything. But I had spent weeks planning. I met with a lawyer in a discreet office near Frankfurt Avenue. I entered with a folder brimming with printouts, messages, financial withdrawals, call logs, and photographs. The lawyer initially flipped through the documents in silence, then looked up at me and asked, "This is the lot. Will it hold?" He nodded when I confirmed. She's been preparing to abandon the marriage, siphoning joint funds, and conspiring with a third party. This isn't just infidelity. It's financial fraud. If you want to go scorched earth, I can make that happen. I responded with a single word: do it. We filed for divorce the following morning, citing dissipation of marital assets. I froze our joint accounts, redirected my direct deposit to a new bank, and filed a restraining order against Craig based on the harassment angle, despite it being somewhat weak. It was enough to create distance and slow their plans next. I submitted a counter-complaint at work with a comprehensive report. I never directly accused Melissa. Instead, I highlighted how the anonymous HR complaint mirrored incidents and dates I had only discussed with her. I laid out a timeline that demonstrated I was being sabotaged by someone close to me. HR took my claims seriously. They had to. I wasn't merely defending myself. I was establishing a pattern of abuse. By Friday, when Melissa came home, she sensed something had shifted. She spotted the envelope on the counter containing the divorce filing and froze. "What is this?" she asked, bewildered. "You tell me," I replied, meeting her gaze directly. "You've been planning this for months. You just didn't think I was smart enough to figure it out?" She attempted to pivot, deny, and even shed a few tears, claiming she felt confused, depressed, and invisible. I let her speak, then interjected. "You stole from me. You mocked me. Allowed your family to treat me like garbage, and you plotted to ruin my job to make your escape easier." Her demeanor shifted. She grew cold. The act dropped. "Oh, you think anyone's going to believe you?" she challenged. I pulled out a USB drive and placed it on the table. They already do. That night, she left without even packing a full suitcase, just her purse, her keys, and whatever pride she had left. Craig's lease, signed under her name, was flagged during the divorce proceedings. The building manager was served notice. They lost their deposit. I made sure of it. I also sent a copy of the incriminating texts, the champagne post, and the deposit note to her family, accompanied by a brief message. "You toasted the wrong man." Her father called once, leaving a voicemail that said, "I didn't know it was that bad." But I never returned the call. HR dropped the complaint. Against me, my name cleared. My supervisor pulled me aside and remarked, "Hell of a mess, but you handled it like a pro." 2 months later, I received another raise. As for Melissa, she moved into a small apartment off Dixie Highway, devoid of Craig, without a new beginning. Just quiet, just consequences. Months later, she texted me, "I didn't think you had it in you." She was right. I had. I always had. I just stopped wasting my strength on people who never deserved it.